Hello everybody, I am Ace Group of the Day. I'm back with a brand new video. Today we are talking about Doctor Who, more specifically the Cybermen. We did a similar video to this last year where I asked the question, should the Daleks be redesigned? And if they were to be redesigned, what would I like them to look like? What elements of previous Dalek designs and new Dalek designs would I take to mould my perfect idea for a brand new Dalek design? The Daleks did appear in Series 11 in Resolution, but as a one-off Dalek, a one that was not redesigned, a one that wasn't really that different. It was a one-off Dalek, a bit like the Special Weapons Dalek, where the next time we see the Daleks, maybe in like a spaceship or a full race of them in like a war or something, it's not going to look like the Dalek we saw in Series 11. It's going to look like a different type of Dalek, and hopefully they still do go with a redesign, because that would be great. But putting that aside for a second, I decided to do this with the Cybermen because obviously the Cybermen did not appear in Series 11, so they might appear in Series 12, who knows, they also might not. But anyway, let's talk about it. So, we're going to be discussing the current design, its flaws, its positives, the original Cybermen, what elements of that you'd have to kind of pick out to keep to the original Cybermen lore and how they're supposed to work and what elements of that work and what don't. Talk about the first big redesign, which was when it came back in 2006. What major difference did they do from the sort of Silver Nemesis ones to the 2006 Cybus versions? And then finally talk about how I'd redesign a Cyberman in the end. But yeah, so let's kick this video off by talking about the current design. The new Cybermen design reintroduced to the series in 2013's Nightmare in Silver. It was a very new Cyberman, not just in looks, but in special abilities as well. This Cyberman, just straight from the looks, takes direct inspiration quite clearly from Iron Man, the Marvel superhero character. It's not, I don't think it's intentional, it might not be, but there's just so many likenesses. First of all, just the very, very slim, packed suit. The way the face is sort of moulded out and cut out that sort of shape. The fact that the chest has a sort of circular light in the middle of it that lights up. The fact that you can kind of take the face off. The fact that you see these Cybermen can fly, etc. The list goes on, and the similarities are a bit odd, but we're not going to sort of delve into that. I don't think that's the main problem. I think one of the main problems is its inconsistency with its powers. Why it was able to do some things in one episode and one part of the episode, and it couldn't do that in the rest of the episode, or maybe future episodes. So this new design was introduced with a few different powers. The main notable one that people like to pick on is the idea that it can move faster than anything, really. There's a sequence in Nightmare in Silver where a singular Cyberman takes one of the children by pretty much stopping time, or very, very much slowing it down, and then moving through the crowd incredibly quickly. Now, that was never used when they were invading the castle later on in the episode, and it was also never used in any of their on-screen appearances since. So, first of all, I don't know why the hell they even introduced that as an idea. It was stupid. I don't know why they did that. It just doesn't work. But also, it's one of those things that it's like, why, you know? We'll talk about its sort of connections with the original Cybermen in a minute, but yeah, we'll just continue with the powers, I suppose, for now. It could also detach its hand. The hand could sort of jiggle about and run off and do stuff. The head could do a full 360. As could, I believe, most of the joints. I think that was kind of the point of it. This design was sort of implemented to have a system that it could upgrade itself depending on what it was attacked with. So if it was attacked with a gun and one of them died by that gun, then the next one could actually adapt to that and just overcome it and not be able to die from that gun. Same with loads of different things as well. This was the main sort of story through Nightmare in Silver, but yet again, it was abandoned right after this episode, and it's a bit unfortunate, because it was actually kind of interesting for that episode, but it did what the Cybermen should never do. It just made them robots, you know? The original concepts of the Cybermen, which we'll talk about in more detail in a minute when we talk about the Mondasian ones, were that they are humans just trying to survive. They're meant to be patchwork, slapped together haphazardly. Just it looks horrible. It's like a body horror type thing, done best on their first stories. And the designs, you know, as they got more robotic, the more of the original concept and what actually made them scary was just lost. And I think this is the furthest from that, because at heart it is just a robot. That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a robot. It doesn't feel like something that is a human under there. There's no human in that. There's no human elements to that. That could just be a robot, and you know, you'd be none the wiser. Yeah, so those powers didn't really help, but anyway, they were sort of brought back in, you know, very, very quickly after that, in Time of the Doctor, where they didn't have all these wonderful, wonderful powers. Instead, they just were able to just march around, and they were able to delete things and shoot at them, and that was a lot more faithful to what at least the Cybermen kind of held by, but still the design was a little bit lacking. When we saw them again in Dark Water and Death in Heaven, in a very clever played on concept design where it was sort of converting the already dead, but they could also fly. The first time a Cyberman could actually sort of fly, I didn't like it. I didn't think it works. I still don't think it works. I don't know why Moffat even decided to implement that as an idea. The Cybermen flying, it adds to that Iron Man type feel to it, but it also just makes them more robotic and makes them more like some sort of alien robot, opposed to what originally, again, was something that was just a patchwork sort of human put together, just slapped together, trying to keep it alive and keep it thriving and not let it die and all that sort of thing. In the 10th Planet, it's a terrifying concept. In World Enough in Time, it's a terrifying concept. But, you know, I'm not saying I hate this design. I don't mind it. I do like it. It's just the problem with it is that it tried to do so many different things and then just abandoned them the next time we saw them. And it's just like, okay. And then at the end of the day, they just look too robotic. And personally, my personal preferences for the Cybermen is to keep with that original element of what actually made them scary. It is a human that's just been ripped apart, and that was done really well in various different versions of the Cybermen. This was definitely the worst done with that. We never saw any human get properly upgraded into these Cybermen. I don't think, anyway, other than like the ones that just emerged from the dirt, but that's different, you know. With the Cybermen, at least, we saw like factories going on in sort of the Age of Steel and all that sort of thing, where they all got like kind of ripped apart and put together, and you know, all that sort of stuff. We saw that a lot with almost every one of the Cybermen episodes. So yeah, but with this one, we just never got that, and I feel that kind of takes away from them as a sort of fear, as a character. And I just wish that if they were going to go with something a little bit scary and a bit weird and different, that they do it with maybe a new character, a new villain, a new kind of more robotic villain, opposed to trying to bring the Cybermen to that level. That was never the intention. But talking about the original Cybermen, you know, we've got to touch upon it. The Mondasian Cybermen, first introduced in the 10th Planet, last seen in the 10th Planet, got brought up again in World Enough in Time in the Doctor Falls, so we're going to talk about that as well, because it is practically the same design. What makes them so scary? Because quite frankly, they shouldn't be scary. There's nothing weird about them. They don't look very robotic. They're not really Cybermen. They just look a bit naff. But if you look deeper into it, I mean, these are people. There are people behind those masks, distorted, broken skulls and faces thrown behind this like sort of paper bag. And that's all it is, it's a paper bag. In the original Cybermen, I know we're not in the World Enough in Time ones, the hands were actually like just human hands. It was patchwork. And even in World Enough in Time, it showed you that slow creation, building all the patience up. That is what I really like about the Cybermen. And that's not really, it's never really been captured as well as it has, personally for me, in World Enough in Time. That was the best version we've seen of the Cybermen, because it was a slow burning, horrible process that was just patchwork. It was just testing. It was just different, and it was scary. So when we did see these Cybermen and they spoke, and they don't even have like robotic voices. I'm not a massive, you know, I don't hate the voices anyway of Cybermen, but this specific one is the scariest voice, and the reason it is because it's so human-like. It speaks like a human that has a sort of voice modulator slightly on it that just like sort of jars the sort of pitch of the speech and all that sort of thing. And it talks in a really creepy kind of fashion that just, it's so off-putting to hear, and it's like, oh god, I don't like that. The elements of this Cybermen obviously that I don't like is the big clunkiness of the waste unit. I do like the fact that it is just a bit of a patchwork creation, and I do love those elements of it, but I do agree the Cybermen should advance over time, and as they have through Tomb of the Cybermen and also like Earthshock, and they all look different almost every time. And I love those. I love the fact that it's managed to come to that, and I definitely agree it should look a little bit more robotic than it does then. I think the Mondasian Cybermen are perfect in their own right, but I don't think we should ever try and recreate that. I think we should just try and move on, but not too far on that it loses the original sort of mythos that this version of the Cybermen was able to kind of create on screen. The first big redesign was the Cybermen. All the way through the classic series, sort of the Tomb of the Cybermen and sort of moon-based ones, they were a big change from the Mondasian ones, but their sort of primitive sort of simpleness was kept the same. Their face design was exactly the same, but replaced with sort of big sort of earmuffs on the side, which made them look more like the Invasion ones. So obviously that they sort of changed over, but the face looked very similar. Then they changed the face, but kept the big sort of ear things and the sort of pulls on the side of the sort of head. So all the way through Classic Who was a very gradual change. This was the Cybermen's first big redesign. When it came back in 2006, they knew what they wanted to do with it. They couldn't make it look a bit crap. So, yeah, they turned it into a robot. And it works. For me, it works. And the reason it works is because we don't see these Cybermen straight away. By the time we see these Cybermen, we've already had a full episode of seeing people get taken off the streets, ripped apart, sent into this factory, and put together in some sort of horrible patchwork design. And then we see their proper first Cybermen attack. We see what they can do, we see their voices, we see everything about that. And that's perfect. And that was a great way of introducing them, you know? Those episodes in Series 2 weren't my favourites, but they definitely conveyed the Cybermen in a better light than what the newer ones have. I really like this design. I think it's a decent design. I don't think it's my favourite design, but it doesn't detract from what the original Cybermen were, if you know what I mean. Like, all this sort of metal armour on the chest, you can very easily see is like a costume. It's like big metal chunks on top of this sort of latex kind of weird fabric underneath. That fabric is what's holding the main body. The armour is just that. It's just armour. The headpiece is the main thing that is kind of latched onto the body. I would like, I wouldn't mind seeing the armour kind of maybe like drop off at some point. But yeah, I love the designs of this. I think the only issue with this design that takes away from the original that I'd like to see return for a redesign, is the wires, is the pipes, is the different things that make it just look a little bit more patchworky. I love these, and it was very refined and it was very good for the new series, and it's exactly what they needed. They needed a very iconic looking robotic Cyberman design. They didn't need anything that looked a bit weird and a bit human-y, otherwise children wouldn't believe that and it would be a bit odd in sort of 2006, and I get that because I was brought up during that era. This was my first Cyberman that I ever saw, so obviously for me I can accept that that would have been a bit weird at the time. So what they did here was perfect to reintroduce the Cybermen, but I think when they came back in Nightmare in Silver, they should have made them a little bit different, but not the different we went. We don't want to go further into that robot territory. I think this is the furthest you want to go with that whole robot look. Make it look a bit worn down, make it look a bit knackered, but don't kind of bring away from what the original tried to put forward. At least these Cybermen were able to convey that body horror type element. Yeah, and that's why I kind of love these a little bit more than I love the Nightmare in Silver ones. So anyway, let's talk about my idea for what a Cyberman redesign should do. The art on screen, by the way, is from a man called Matt Savage, who does some incredible Doctor Who concept designs. This is a great example of kind of the direction I'd go with kind of rebooting the Cybermen. Take them back a step. This combines the Cybus ones with the sort of Earthshock ones, in my opinion. It keeps that bodysuit design that I was kind of talking about, as you can kind of see. Definitely keep the bodysuit, make it a sort of grey, don't make it as like flashy and sort of, don't make it like silver, make it a sort of dark grey with a little bit of light element into it, that make it look just like a bodysuit. That's all it really needs to be. Maybe have one of the hands, and this is just taking inspiration from what's on screen here from Matt Savage, as well as some previous designs. Maybe have one of the hands human, and maybe have the other one robot. Sort of really kind of mechanical, sort of steampunky type looking hand, and the other one just a normal human hand, really relating back to that patchwork thing. A key thing that I really love about this concept art design shown on screen here is the chest piece. I love how it's been able to bring back an actual chest unit, which works incredibly well. I don't think we've seen a proper chest unit in a long time, and I think this would be a great thing to bring back into it. The new series Cybermen, Nightmare in Silver, and the Cybus ones never had a big chest unit. It was just kind of, there was a light, of course, built into one of the chests, and there was a sort of circular C design built into the other one's chest. But this one's a full chest unit. It's got buttons, it's got switches, it's got dials, makes it look a bit more mechanical and a bit more kind of stuck together, and it just, yeah, it gives away that kind of weird, creepy vibe. You may be able to also see there's some sort of like, looks like kind of a backpack straps, but yeah, I'm going to call those kind of pipes. You can see kind of pipes coming off the left, right, and just above that sort of central power box thing. On the arms, you've got bits of metal clamped into the skin, kind of. And on the legs, you could very easily kind of build like an exoskeleton for it made out of metal. That doesn't cover the whole thing. And this is definitely what this design's gone for here, that you can kind of see on screen, hopefully, is that this design takes that bodysuit and just gives it an exoskeleton. An exoskeleton very similar to that of like Tomb of the Cybermen and all that sort of thing, but gives it a whole modern kind of update design with the sort of round pads built into each of the arms and each of the joints in the legs and all that sort of thing, and in the feet. It makes it that tiny bit more robotic whilst keeping it to that sort of human element, because this one looks quite human in terms of its body. It's just the head and the sort of exoskeleton chunks to it that actually really work as a robot part, which is how it should be done. The Cybermen aren't robots, they are patchwork designs by Concept in the 60s, so I would love them to stick with that if they ever wanted to re-update it. The headpiece shown on screen is a really, really nice headpiece. I would probably change it and maybe make the tube a little bit, maybe a tad chunkier, but move it in a little bit so it's not as kind of stretched out. What I really do like about this is that it's got rid of the big earmuff things. I've been starting to get a bit sick of those in previous years. I like how it brings the light back onto the helmet, and I also like how the helmet is a direct homage to the Mondasian ones, whereas the face just takes general inspiration from loads of different eras of Cybermen, giving it that neutral looking, quite scary face. And yeah, that's pretty much all I really want to say about that. As you can see, this designer, Matt Savage, has come up with something very, very kind of new series, but very, very classic as well. This is absolutely what I would love to see the Cybermen redesigned at. Something maybe not exactly like this, but something similar to this. Something similar to this that kind of gives off the same sort of vibe, the same sort of feeling. But yeah, no, just generally, I think that really looks good. I think it definitely gives off the right impression that you'd want from the Cybermen, and it doesn't make it too robotic, and I think that's what's kind of gone wrong with Cybermen in recent years, is that they do feel too much like Iron Man robots or all that sort of thing. They should feel like patchwork humans, in my opinion. That's the main original concept of the Cybermen, and I absolutely think they should stick with that. And I think this design is definitely one of those ones that makes me go, yeah, absolutely, I love that, and I think it looks brilliant, and I actually want to see that in Series 12, in Series 13, whatever. Just in the future of Who, whenever they bring the Cybermen back. I personally would like a redesign. Obviously, because I really don't like the Nightmare in Silver ones, but that's just my opinion, you know. I have a soft spot for them, I think they're okay, but I think it's definitely time for a redesign at least. We've had the Nightmare in Silver ones now for 6 years. 6 years, and by the time Series 12 comes on, it'll be 7 years. So, you know, and even if they're not in Series 12, and if they're 13, you know, Series 13, it might be 7, 8, 9 years, you know, who knows, you know, how long it's going to be before this, you know, last Cyberman last appeared on screen, and realistically, I think it does need and maybe deserve a redesign. But that's just my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment below for any more suggestions in the future, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Do check out the Patreon if you want to support the channel, the Discord server if you want to gush about Doctor Who, and maybe talk about this potential Cyberman redesign and see what you think about it as well. Maybe give your own ideas, that'll be quite fun to discuss about in the Discord server. Check out all my social media links down in the description below, and that is pretty much it from me. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.